On this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out, we recap the exhilarating All-Star Game in Miami and how Nick Suzuki performed. And also for Jake Allen, we're inside a month from the NHL trade deadline. Is he on the move? And finally, look good, feel good, play good. Those Habs uniforms, the reverse retros, have not been great for the Montreal Canadiens. We'll get our thoughts if it's superstitious or not for them to keep going with them or just drop it all together. Plus the bonus questions on this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out. Welcome into a new episode of Hockey Inside Out. I'm your host, Moe Khan, alongside the newly minted inducted to the London Hall of Fame, Rick Green. Rick, how you been, my friend? Congratulations on the induction.
Thank you very much. Really enjoying my time here in London and, trying to get caught up with some old friends and having a few, exchanging on a few stories along with a few other things.
Well, they're not in the Hall of Fame, but also Andrew Berkshire and Stu Cowan here on this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out. Gents, let's dive into it. The NHL All-Star Game was in South Florida over the weekend. Quite the exciting event, as you can tell by my reaction here. Your thoughts on how Nick Suzuki performed? Quickly here, guys, I thought the coolest things were the uniforms and that they need to maintain the idea to have this game in warm weather cities every 2-3 years, because South Florida is where you want to be during the cold months of winter where we're located in Montreal.
Well, hey, look at like every year, right? All-Star Game, entertainment, put that much talent on the ice and watch these guys do their thing. It's pretty special. And, Nick Suzuki obviously fits that type of play where he's able to, dipsy doodle, make passes, make plays, and have a good time. And, it's really a nice occasion for all those guys to get an opportunity to show what exactly they can do unchecked and, really entertaining. And, I just feel bad that Nick doesn't get a chance to eat that much Chipotle, over the course of
the year. That was quite hilarious that he wins the golf thing and wins a year's supply of Chipotle. I guess, team lunches will be on Nick when they travel to Ontario and many other NHL cities. I think the first All-Star Game between the two Western Conference teams was terrible. It was objectively awful to watch. And then the second one between the two Eastern teams, you can tell both of them kind of wanted to win it. I think the idea of putting Crosby and Ovechkin together gave us something special. Because at the end of the day, I'm the same age as Sidney Crosby, and I know it's not going to be too much longer that he's going to be in the league. Same with Alex Ovechkin, who's 37 years old now. Those guys getting to have that chance, it was a little bit special. The last game, I didn't get a chance to watch it, but it seemed like it was kind of the same as the second game, a little bit more entertaining. I think the All-Star Game is pretty easy to fix. The 3-on-3 format works. But the issue is that the players don't really try a lot. And you saw it in that first game where a guy would score a goal and he's got his head down and he's not happy. Just have fun, right? You could tell that there was a little bit more competition in the second game between the two Eastern divisions. They were having a little bit more fun. I think what they need to do is everyone wants to look at the draft. I think the draft, the NHL doesn't want to do that for a myriad of reasons, especially the alcohol thing, which was what kind of made it fun. But, I think they need to keep the divisions, but then add 2 more teams, an all-rookie team and a sophomore team. You want to get these guys trying in the All-Star Game? Have them get shown up by some rookies. That'll get some guys hustling a little bit, and then maybe we'll get some more competitive All-Star Games. The skills competition, I think, has a lot further to go to fix it than the All-Star Game. I think the All-Star Game, they're almost there. They just need a little bit of that young energy, Trevor Zegras out there instead of putting sleepy emojis on Twitter out there annoying guys.
Well, I wrote a column last week saying they should just call it the All-Star Party, not the All-Star Game. That's all it is. It's just a party for guys to go down to Florida and have a good time. That skills competition was brutal. It was just, it was painful to watch. The only highlight was when Ovechkin was on the ice with Crosby and Ovechkin Jr., the little kid. That was the cutest thing. That's the only thing I'm going to remember from that All-Star weekend is that. That was pretty cool. Next year, they could maybe just have those 3 on the ice for 2 hours skating around instead of the skills competition. It seems like now, the NBA All-Star Game, it used to be the dunk competition was the highlight. Then it became cool to not go in the dunk competition. Oh, I'm not going to go in the dunk competition. I'm too good for that. And now it seems to be trickling down to the NHL All-Star Game. It's like, it's not cool to try. It's not cool to put in an effort. It's not cool to celebrate if you score a goal. And it was, to me, it was painful to watch. I mean, it wasn't hockey. But I took my son to the AHL All-Star Game at the Place Bell the other night, and it was fun. It was like the guys were actually back checking, and there was no physical contact, but you could tell the guys were working hard. They were trying. It was a fun event. The place was full. There was one game went to an 11-round shootout. All the fans were up on their feet, and the tickets were $28. It was a great show. So it's a case of the AHL guys are trying. I guess they still have something to prove. They still hope to. I don't know if there's any NHL scouts at an AHL All-Star Game or skills competition, but it was much more entertaining and much more fun than the NHL All-Star Game. But it is what it is, right? It's just a weekend to wine and dine the NHL partners and advertisers and try and recruit new advertisers. It's a weekend. I mean, I'm sure Nick Suzuki would have preferred to be on a beach somewhere like his other teammates, but it was in Florida. He did get a break. Chantal Maccabi was there with him and posted some pictures of Nick on the beach. I'm sure he had a good time when he was there. I learned that he's a 10 handicap golfer. I know his dad's a really good golfer. And I learned that he putts better with a hockey stick than I do with a golf putter. So that was sort of the takeaway. The two takeaways from that weekend would be Nick Suzuki putting, winning the golf competition with a birdie, and he said a lifetime supply of Chipotle. Maybe there's a business opportunity there for some rich guy to open a Chipotle's restaurant near the Bell Center. And that with Ovechkin's kid on the ice with him and Sidney Crosby. That was pretty cool.
Just wanted to bring up the point, guys. Was it the timing of the game? 3 p.m., Saturday afternoon, kind of lost in translation. You know how these other All-Star games are prime time affairs. I know ESPN had the game and was an afternoon match for them, but had this game been prime time, do you think that would have elevated the profile of these guys playing better than what they did at 3 p.m.?
No.
I don't think so. I think this weekend, for entertainment purposes, is really for the kids, so it makes sense to do it in the afternoon. I think that they actually have got right. I think the major obstacle right now is, like, this is for kids, right? I have a 5-year-old who wants to watch hockey. He can't stay up late enough to watch a full game and not ruin his next school day most of the time. So I put on the skills competition. He was bored. He couldn't watch it. He couldn't keep his attention. The All-Star game itself, a little bit, but the skills competition is just too slow. There's too much time between events. There's no rhythm. There's no organization. And I feel like the skills competition used to be significantly better. Like in the 90s, early 2000s, maybe that's thinking back to my youth. But it's stuff like Connor McDavid going 4 for 4 on the accuracy shooting. That's really cool. Why is it timed? I don't remember it ever being timed. I remember they had like a certain amount of time to do it. But when Ray Bourque was going 4 for 4, it was just he went 4 for 4. That's what counted. So don't worry about that. And then you got like the breakaway competition that's like split up between events the whole night. Like, it's just nonsense.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah,
they've overthought it.
They need to condense it to like 1 hour. I mean, I felt sorry for people who paid a lot of money sitting there for 3 hours. There was like half an hour into the thing, and they hadn't done a skills event yet. I mean, how many times can you watch goalies shoot the puck from one end of the ice to the other and miss the net? I mean, it seemed like it was like 25 minutes of goalies shooting the puck down the ice and missing the net. It was like it was so bad that it became comical. It was almost like a Saturday Night Live skit. But I mean, it should be condensed to a 1 hour format and start off quick. Like, have the hardest shot competition or have the fastest skater competition right off the bat to get people interested. Because I'm sure the TV ratings, I'm sure by hour 3, most people would change the channel.
I wish they would get a little more creative and get a fresh look in, their overall weekend games or the games. I mean, it's just like, oh, here we go again, the same old, and just different players doing the same stuff. But like you guys touched on, it's a long drawn out thing, and it gets boring after a while. It's there for the young kids. Maybe they enjoy it more, but I think they should really look at changing up a little bit and trying to get a little more creative in their ideas on what people would like to see.
Well, I'll say this to wrap it up here, guys. In 1996 in Boston, Paul Kariya recruited Timo Solani to come play for the Ducks eventually, right? You wonder if Nick Suzuki might have done some recruiting with those guys there in South Florida to maybe come play for the Habs down the road. You never know, right? He could be double agent for Ken Hughes as well. Speaking of Ken Hughes, the trade deadline is coming up in less than a month from now. And a guy who could be on the block is Jake Allen. And now you look at Jake Allen and what he's done for the Montreal Canadiens. He still has 18 months left on his contract at around $3.8 million or so, give or take. I looked at it last year, guys. There were 6 goals who were dealt on deadline day of March 21st. Is Jake Allen still a Montreal Canadian by the time we get to the deadline or past the deadline on the weekend?
I think he is. He actually has 2 years left after this one. He's signed until 2025. So it's a lot for a team to take on in a flat cap, especially in a year when like Jake Allen hasn't been incredible. He hasn't been the best goalie on his team so far. I think that he's a good 1B option for teams, but if Allen's moving, it's probably just as like a security blanket for a team that isn't sure if their goalie can like stay healthy in the first round kind of thing, or they might have to throw a guy in there for 1 or 2 games in a 7-game series and shake things up. And for that, I feel like there's probably cheaper options available than Jake Allen at almost $4 million for the next 2 years on top of this one. So it seems like you wouldn't get great value back. You might have to take a contract back in order to move Jake Allen. I think he would have had more value last year, actually.
Yeah, it's going to depend what happens with other teams, because if there's an injury to a number 1 goalie between now and the trade deadline, and there's a team desperate for a goalie, a proven NHL goalie, they might be willing to overpay. Jake Allen's 32 years old. He signed that new contract that kicks in next season, 2 years with a $3.85 million salary cap hit. Jake Allen's not a number 1 goalie in the NHL now, but he's a really, really good backup goal. I mean, he was signed here to come in and play 30 games behind Carey Price. And when we see Jake Allen, the more he plays, the more his game sort of breaks down, and the more likely he is to get injured also. But for a team that's not certain about their goaltending, as you said, Andrew, going into the playoffs, or for a team who might lose their number 1 goalie between now and the trade deadline, Jake Allen's a proven commodity. He's a great locker room guy. He's a well-respected guy. He'll fit into any team he would go into. So I don't think that Kent Hughes is shopping him around. But if he gets a call from somebody looking for a goalie and he gets a good offer, I think he moves him. Yeah. And also, the second part to that is at some point, they need to find out if Caden Primo can be a goalie of the future in the NHL or not. And so maybe if they trade Allen next year, they sort of have Montembeault and Primo battle out to see who might be the goalie of the future, split the games 50-50 for them next season moving forward. Primo struggled this season in Laval. He's had some injuries. Montembeault's played really well in Montreal after he had the offseason surgery for his wrist, which he played through last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Allen is traded, but it's not an urgent rush for Kent Hughes to do it. But again, I think it's sort of twofold. If you can get something in return for him, and then next season it sets up to have the 2 young goalies sort of battle it out to see who might be the goalie of the future, or if they need to look in another direction, whether it's through the draft or whether making a trade once the rebuild gets further along and goaltending becomes more of a concern. I think for right now, Kent Hughes is happy with the way the goaltending situation is set up, but it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big rush to move a Jake Allen. I mean, I'm a little concerned about his health. He seems to be getting bogged down, with injuries and stuff. But, the bottom line here is there's a concern back there. Obviously, Montembeault has stepped up, has been able to do a pretty good job. But if you lose a guy like Allen, I'm not sure whether or not you can find somebody that's going to fill that void at this point. And, he's obviously under contract, but Ken Hughes, I'm sure, has had conversations with different teams around the league for those that are maybe coming up with one of their goalies that is not capable of playing down the stretch in playoffs. So I think it's fair to say Kent is not slow to react when it comes to an opportunity to make his club better. So that being said, Jake Allen could very well be moved for the right person. So it's going to be interesting as we get closer to the trade deadline to see what the team's going to look like in the future.
And one thing we can't forget about with Jake Allen is like the leadership that he's brought to the team and the stability that he's brought to the team over the last couple of years when there really hasn't been a lot, right? He's been tasked with making some pretty tough saves. I don't think I've ever seen a goaltender have to move cross crease as often as Jake Allen has the last 2 seasons. So there's been a lot put on his plate. And would Sam Montembeault look as good as he does today without Allen back there to like be his support system, right? I don't know if he would excel as well if he had Caden Primo back there, who the Canadiens don't seem to trust at this point in the NHL. When you don't have that safety blanket of Jake Allen, things can maybe fall apart a little bit. So I think the reason why Jake Allen was signed for that extension is pretty blatant. They want that stability through this rebuild. They don't want to ever bottom out to the point where like they don't have a veteran goalie to stick in there that they can trust to calm things down. Even if you are getting blown out, it's very rare that Jake Allen is the one who's showing frustration. It's happened like once or twice maybe this season. So I think that also is value that Jake Allen brings to the organization that can't necessarily be measured in his like on ice performance numbers. So it's something to consider when we're looking at trading as well.
Yeah, he's one of the classiest athletes I've ever dealt with. Just a real class act. Smart, polite, well-liked in the room, well-respected. And, if it's a team going into the playoffs with a young goalie who's not that proven and they're not 100% convinced, and you bring in Allen, he's also got 2 more years on the contract as a mentor. I mean, when Caden Primo was playing so well in the AHL playoffs last season, he talked about how much Jake Allen helped him when he was struggling, giving him a call a couple of times and boosting his confidence and saying, I've been there. I remember when I was your age and struggling also. You're still young. Don't worry about it. Just keep moving forward. And that really helped Primo. Primo said how much that meant to him, hearing it from a goalie who, Caden Primo is looking to take his job away in the future. But Jake Allen, he understands why he's here. He understands he's not going to be here when this team gets to the end of this rebuild and are a competitive team. But he's spoken how much he's looking forward to watching this team when they do get to that point, wherever he is, whether he's retired or playing someone else, to watch Suzuki and Caulfield and these guys. And he has played a big role and will continue to play a big role in the development of this team.
And
quickly here, guy.
No, sorry, I was just going to say chemistry is really important with those guys in the net. You got some guys that, there's little different egos. There's a little different hurt feelings when they don't get the call when they think they're supposed to get the call. And that breaks down a good working relationship between goaltenders. And, Jake Allen doesn't obviously seem that type of person. And he's the kind of guy that fits the bill as far as being able to help young guys and is able to accept when, his partner is playing well and they're all in it together. So that's a bonus to have that kind of relationship, especially back there in the nets.
So, Andrew, you brought up the point that perhaps the confidence for Caden Primo might be wavering. And Stu, you brought up the point that there's no rush to maybe offload Allen. So what do you do with Caden Primo? Are these next 12 months the referendum on his status as perhaps he's either a HAB or he might be elsewhere in a year or two from now?
Well, as the Laval-Rocket, continue to make their way up the standings here and into playoff position, I think you evaluate Caden Primo's play. He had a rough start to the year. Most of the team did. He seemed to pick it up a bit lately. So you let him marinate a little bit longer. I think if there's any lesson from Sam Montembeault is that it's not too late for Caden Primo to figure something out, right? Goaltenders are funny sometimes. Sometimes they break out in their late 20s, so let him figure it out. You don't have to rush him into anything. Eventually, they do have to find out what he is in the NHL, but I don't think he's ready at this point. I want to see him be dominant in the American Hockey League again like he was in last year's playoffs, and then maybe give him a test ride in the NHL. Because every time so far, he has looked very much like a deer in headlights.
Yeah, and he is young for a goalie. I mean, goalies mature later. I wrote a column recently, and I remember covering Ed Belfour when he was playing for the Canadian national team. He was like 25 years old, undrafted, and saying, the Blackhawks believe I'm like their goalie of the future. I remember rolling my eyes like, kid, it's not going to happen. And then not only did it happen, he was Rookie of the Year in the NHL, and I think he was 26, went on to win Stanley Cup, went on to be a Hall of Famer. So goalies, Rick knows this, goalies are weird, and some mature earlier than others. I mean, Jake Allen has said, very few goaltenders are like Carey Price, who just come out of junior and are ready to play in the NHL and just that natural ability. Most of the guys, it takes them a lot longer to develop into the goalie they will eventually become.
Well, yes or no, guys, is Jake Allen going to be a Montreal Canadian by the deadline day when we hit March of next month?
I say yes.
I say yes.
I'm going to say no. Just that I think there's going to be a team that's going to make Kent Hughes an offer, and I think his value, Jake Allen's value, we've seen the injuries come in the more he plays. I think his value will drop as time goes on. So just to be different than the other guys in the panel, I wouldn't be surprised if he is traded by the time of the deadline.
Well, the fascination will unfold these next 3-4 weeks here for the Montreal Canadiens. Could they get value for Jake Allen or others who could be on the block for this team? We'll find out, because the Habs right now are going towards the top 5 of the NHL draft lottery. Perhaps Connor Bedard, but it could be sweetened by the fact that you can get more value for Jake Allen and others in the next few weeks. Well, as we move along here this Montreal Canadiens season, one of the hot topics is the aesthetics and their uniform, the reverse retro uniform, which pays all homage to the Montreal Expos with the powder blues. And I'm a uniform geek, guys. I used to work in sports retail, so uniforms is my background, my forte. Now, they have not played well, guys. They are now 0-6-1 with this reverse retro. And if you go back to the first edition back in 21, 22, whenever that was, they were 1-5-1. So this reverse retro has not played well for the Montreal Canadiens. Your thoughts? I know you guys are not big fans of this uniform, but what can be done to reverse this curse with these third uniforms?
Well, there's only one more game left. They wear them. That's this Saturday, Super Bowl weekend against the Islanders. So fans going to that game. The NHL seems to be all about gambling now. Hockey Night in Canada has become gambling night in Canada. I'm not a gambler, but if there's one sort of sure bet, it seems this season, is the Canadiens are wearing their blue sweaters. Pretty safe bet to bet against them. It doesn't really. Hockey players are superstitious. I'm sure after one loss, it's not a big deal. 2, 3, 4, but they're 0-6-1. I think it is now in those sweaters. It's probably in the back of guys' minds, and I feel for people maybe who a father bringing his kid to the Bell Center for the first game ever and not getting a chance to see the Canadiens in their red sweaters. Although the kids might think it's cool to see them in the blue sweaters. I don't know, Rick. You'd know better. Maybe it's weird too when you're used to playing with your teammates and you're always in like red or white, and then all of a sudden blue. Maybe it's a little bit of an adjustment. It feels a little bit weird. It's not the reason why they lost the games, but players are superstitious, and I think maybe it does get in their heads a little bit. But it's all about money, right? Selling more sweaters, generating more revenue. That's the reason these sweaters were brought in. Tribute to the Expos or whatever it was. They're better than a lot of the other retro sweaters I've seen on other teams in the league. But does it play anything into it? Maybe a little bit. I think after 4 or 5 games might be in the back of guys' heads a little bit. Like, here we go again with these sweaters. But I said one more game left, and we'll see if they can go a perfect 0-8. Somebody on Twitter called them tank tops, which is a pretty good line.
Superstition, you say, no. It's part of it. The guys have a little thing in the back of their mind that, they figure out that they're going to find a way to win or find a way to lose. But, my plan would be, let them play those jerseys the last 14 games. Let them play that out, increase their odds. But it's kind of strange you see this happening the way it is, because if you look at the games that they played and they did lose, they played some good games. They were deserving of better results than what they got in their baby blue jerseys, but they just found a way to lose. And what can I say other than let them play more games in the baby blue? That won't happen, but let them play the one more game and then see where they go with the final stretch. But anyways, it's kind of a weird situation with those jerseys. Like Stu said, it's about money, and I could do without even looking at them, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I don't hate them in comparison to other retro jerseys that have come out. I think Stu was right about that. They're not anywhere near the worst of anything. I don't like them either. The Canadiens in blue is just something that doesn't work to me. I know people like the last reverse retro. I didn't really like that one either. But the combination of just statistical probability of a team that's lost 31 of 51 games and that mental factor in the back of your head, you lose a couple games in that jersey, you look back at the reverse retro from a couple years ago and start thinking, oh, these are like the bad luck thing, and players are superstitious even at the highest levels. There's probably something to that as well, but I think this is more than anything just a team that's not very good, happened to lose games while wearing that jersey, and has created this narrative. The craziest thing about all this reverse retro stuff thing to me is that they brought this jersey in as a tribute to the Expos, and in these games they're like, the Expos mascot we're going to kick him out of the building and get this new one to come in. And it makes no sense whatsoever. I don't get it. Like, you'd think you'd roll Youppi out in an Expos jersey or something, right? But no, they're like, this is our tribute to the Expos, and we're going to ignore Youppi entirely and make up this new Michael Pizzetta mascot.
It's all, I mean, it's aimed, I think it's aimed at a younger audience too, these sweaters, the kids wanting them for Christmas or whatever. And I remember when the Canadiens had those horrible barber stripe sweaters. My son at the time was maybe 7 or 8. He thought they were the coolest thing he'd ever seen, and he wanted me to go out and buy him one, and I did. So I think that's the sort of what they're marketing at the younger kids. I know I was walking by the outdoor rink near my house with my dog the other day, and I saw a couple of kids on the rink wearing the blue Caulfield sweaters. So that's what it's about, selling sweaters. It's about increasing hockey-related revenue and that kind of stuff. But, I mean, if you wanted, as Rick said, wear them for the rest of the season. And if you want to go full tank top, put Bedard on the back of all the sweaters instead of the guy's real name. Although Gary Bettman has insisted that teams in the NHL do not tank.
Don't tank. No tanking.
No tanking in the NHL.
Yeah. Just wear them the rest of the season and put Bedard on the back of every guy's sweater, and maybe that'll work.
I mean, Gary also says that everybody likes the animated boards more than before, so we can take his word for it.
He also says the NHL referees are the best referees of any sport.
Yeah.
No question. To Stu's point, though, when I worked sports retail, the most popular uniform was the barbershop uniform when they had the 100th anniversary. Well, I'll quickly bring this up here, guys. Probably the favorite alternate amongst Hat fans was the Heritage Classic from 2003 when they played the Oilers. That was one they should have brought back as a reverse retro for this year's edition than what they had on the ice. Maybe that would have increased their odds and maybe 1 or 2 more wins. Who knows? But,
well, that's when they sold all those toques when Jose Theodore wore the toque on top of his helmet. I remember my kid wanted one of those and going to the Bell Center boutique, and they ran out. They'd sold out of the toques, and they were supposed to get more in afterwards. So it'd be interesting to see. I mean, Canes don't release numbers. It's a private business. It'd be interesting. I wonder how many of those blue sweaters they did sell. I know they're not cheap.
Yeah, they sold a ton of those toques from the Gillette Stadium game against the Bruins as well, with the white with the blue stripe. I know that was a really popular jersey as well.
Well, there's better options than what they had out there, and perhaps whenever they come back with the 3rd edition of the reverse retro will be much better than what it was the first 2 times. Well, that would do it for this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out. Don't forget to submit your questions and comments, and we look forward to conversing about that in a future episode. And also check out the YouTube page for Hockey Inside Out. And sign up for the newsletter on MontrealGazette.com/newsletters. And for full content and bonus episodes, head on by Hockey Inside Out. And for the newly minted Rick Green, who's enjoying his time in London, Ontario, Stu Cowan and Andrew Berkshire, wish you a great week. We'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.